Welcome back. We're working on Gem Wars. So last time we got our spline system set up, as well as a rendered target that erases as this object moves along the spline. The spline in this case looks like this. So if I was to run this again, you can see the ship moves along the spline, and it is over here on the rendered target erasing the trail as it moves. Now, why is the ship going through the fields is the next question. So what we're going to do is we're going to change these trails here into footprints, and then I'm going to finalize this and add a quick state to it, and then we're going to go on to the next object. So over in Illustrator, these are the finished maps. You can see I've added these footprints down here. I drew these last night. It's just a pen for the footprint, and then I reflected it and sized them. So now over here in brushes, I can select these 2 feet. Let me go ahead and fix this so it's a better positioning. I can select these 2 feet and drag these in here as a pattern brush. We don't want it to do anything with the corners, and we want to approximate the path. Okay. So now up here, I can just take this path and change it just like that. So we're going to do that for each one of these. Like that. Our map, we do want it to have this one. Over here, I think we're going to change this spline and just kind of drag it all over, and then we'll add in footprints, but we'll do that in a few minutes. So let's start with this. We need to separate out our layers now. So come on. So in the campaign home, I want to eliminate everything that is not the path. So we're going to drag in everything except for these paths. Like that. And then I'll make a new one. We'll call this objects. And then I'll make a new sublayer here. Called paths, like this. And now what I'm going to do is turn off the object layer, turn off our borders, corners, papers, and background, and the compass rose. Now we're going to export, and I need to look at this. This is artboard. Well, we have 2 artboards on this. Which one of these am I using? I think I'm using 29. Like that. Okay. So I'm going to export as artboard 29 under my maps, home layers for my trails all. So when I look in the assets location, this one is the new one. This was created right now, right? No, it's this one. This was created on the 22nd. This one was created today, right? So I get rid of this again here. We're going to export it one more time. And we want to make the transparent background white. And we'll save that. And now what I want to do is I want to check the size. So this thing is 3200 by 2400. So we'll change this one to be 72 by 3200 and then 2400. That's not good. Let's just do that. Because I just may need to import that again. We're going to say that this is 3200. Because now when I place this over the top of my layer here, my front foreground, that does seem fine. These ones are going the wrong direction. So we'll fix that. So back over here in Illustrator, we need to reverse this direction here. How do I do that here? The second, I want to reverse direction of a pen in Illustrator. Right click on the path. Select Make Compound Path. Click on the Reverse Path button. Is there a window here for path? Oh, where is this? So it says I could just click on the end of the path. Ah, crap. First button in the object options available. Object. Create from guides, path. Reverse path direction. Boom. There we go. And then we can release. There we go. We got to do it again here. There we go. Now, the reason we're using white is because on the render target, we wrote a shader called this. Map home render target. Nope, that's not it. It's the shader called unlit multiply. And what this does is it takes two textures and it multiplies them together, effectively eliminating any of the white pixels to transparent. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do a export as. We want artboard 29 here for this number 20, this one. Okay, now we're going to eliminate the last path. We're going to export it again. As this one. Okay. The next one is this little one here. We're going to export as. Like that. The next one we get rid of is this one here. And I'm doing that because it's otherwise it's appending a suffix, which I don't want. And then the last one is this one here. Which will make like that. Now we can re-enable all of our matte components, and we can save our map. What is this? And we can save. Okay. So now in Photoshop, I'm going to open each one of these layers here. Okay, and I'm going to resize this to be 72 with a width of 3200. And then I'm going to change the canvas to be 2400. And then we'll save it right on top. Okay, rinse and repeat. 72, 3200. Resize the canvas to be 2400. Rinse and repeat. 72, 3200. Change the canvas to 2400. Save that. Next one, almost done. 72, 2400, 3200. Change the canvas size to be 2400. Now last one, 72, 3200. Change the canvas to be 2400. Now over in the game where I have the art, you can open this, and these things are currently at they got resized down quite a bit before I brought them in. Okay. So I'm going to make a new copy of these temporarily in here. And we're going to open these up in Photoshop. I'm not even sure I want to do that, because this thing is going to resize them down to 2048. Is that why they're coming in like that? Yes, we don't need to resize them. So instead now when I open this up, and I look at my trails, this size is 32 by 2400, so that's perfect. Okay, we can close this up. And over here, this is going to be called Trail 1, Trail 2, Trail 3, Trail 4, and Trail 5. And we can just copy these right on top. That's it. This should now update. We now have our footprints. If I was to eliminate the player sprite, there you can see footprints which are moving I didn't like this one, how this ends. And same thing with this one. We'll bring those back in just a minute though. For now, we'll leave them. And now I have to make a decision because when this is running, these things are appearing and not walking. I think I'm kind of okay with that. Okay, so let's look at the other objects that we've added in here. That looks fine. We're going to see we've added this tree and that tree. So let's go back to the foreground here and open this up in Photoshop. And we are going to remove this tree and this tree because we don't want those baked. We still need to get rid of this lighthouse too. Other than that, I think we can have everything baked. Right? So down here on the lighthouse, we're going to make a duplicate of this tree. I'm going to call it Lighthouse. Its sprite is going to be did I not make the sprite? I don't see a lighthouse. We don't see a lighthouse in here. So let me open up another Illustrator instance. Give it just a second. Wonder, can I have two? Yes, I can. So I should be able to open a recent file called, I think it's called Map All. And when I look at the home called Field, Lighthouse is under C here. This one, so I can bring this to the Asset Explorer. No, I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to just turn off the rest of the objects here. It doesn't have an artboard, so I'll give it an artboard. Artboard 3. I'm going to export as, we're going to put that here. An artboard 3. I'm going to call this Lighthouse. Oops. Let me do that again. Because I want to make it transparent. And then we're going to close this one without saving it. So back over here, if I was to open this, it's just at 72. That's fine. We're going to trim it. And now I'm going to bring that into Unity. Okay, we want to make sure everything's set the same. So this is a sprite. The pivot's at the bottom. That's really important for the sorting layers. All of these we want to have no compression on them. Okay, my lighthouse is too small. So let's first trim it. Now we're going to size it to be 72 at 2000. Same thing, sprite, pivot at the bottom, no quality. And now we're going to bring this in as my sprite here. We want him to stay exactly at 0, 0. -205, -266. Oh God. We'll fix this in just a second. This lighthouse, we want to move it down here like this. Change the sprite size to be 0.25 or something like that. 0.55, 0.5. Still a little too big. Like that. It looks like I have this one flipped like that. We want the pivot to be at the bottom, which is right. And now I can test this by using the ship here. And I can just move it. We should see it properly go between the layers. I'm doing that by, in my project settings under graphics, I set a custom transparent axis to be on the Y-axis instead of the Z. Okay, so let's fix a couple of these things here. That's right. This one needs to be a negative 0.25 on it. So 15.37 minus 0.25 is 15.12. Okay, and then that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. 205. So that moves it to the left. So I want to add 205. Which is 10.59. And then it's a plus 2.66 of my 2.84 is negative 0.18. That doesn't seem right. It's negative 2.84 minus 2.66 is negative 5.5. That's right. And that's because these sprites should be at 0, 0. Like that. Okay. So when I look at this map, I believe everything is done now. The signpost needs to be done. This tree seems to be screwed up. If I was to turn off everything on the foreground except for the foreground image, I think we want to still replace out this tree and this one. So let's do those really fast. We'll make a duplicate of this tree here. Bring it up here. Like that. I'm going to flip it on the x-axis. Call this tree 6. We're going to do it one more time here for the signpost. We don't want this flipped. The size we can make it 0.53. We'll set the position here. Like that. And I'm going to call this one a Signpost. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the foreground image. Remove this one and this one. That's it. Now you can see that that's at the proper point. The signpost is not. So if I look at this, change its pivot to be the bottom. We'll apply it. When I move the ship over it now it's acting correctly. Okay, so our map here is mostly completed now. We still can bring in the proper textures. I need to figure out if I want to have these feet get automatically placed as that thing walks. I'll think about that for a little bit. Because I think this is fine. So now when this happens, it looks sort of like this. You can see the feet moving as they appear. So let's set up our different states for this map. The first thing I want to look at here, these are all my different textures. If we look at these as a, you can see there they are. Okay. So under my prefabs, I'm going to make a new folder here called Maps. On my player, this one, I want this to be called a map player script. We're going to change this to be called map player on render target. Okay. In here, I'm currently setting this to 100 by 100. So I want to have a public vector 2 in here for the reveal square size and set that to a new vector 2 of 100 and 100. And then down here we can do this. Like that. And that order of operations should be right. Okay. Down here, my render target image, We're going to make a new script for this. And I'm going to call this my map render target image script. I'm going to set the namespace here. Make it a base mono behavior. And I want to have on here a require component, a type of image, which comes from Unity UI and then from the Unity engine. So now I'm going to have a protected image called image, and then we have a protected virtual void awake where I do an image equals get component, and it's a type of image. And then down here I want to expose the image like that. Okay. We also want to have a protected rect transform called rect transform. And again, same thing. Like that. Like that. All that looks fine. Change these out here. Since we now no longer have to pull a reference on every update call. Now hold on, something's wrong. This is for the rect. Like that. And then we set the main texture. Okay, now we can do a couple other things on here. We're going to make a new function here called public virtual void. Well, actually, we have something in here called a spline walker. So when I look at this thing, Spline Walker, it's got a duration, it's got a look forward, it's got a progress. If progress is greater than 1, then it's going to either loop or stop. This means it stops. That's only if it's going forward. So here, can I do a debug.log and we can say done and just see. Let's try it again. Oh, it's going to error because I need to add the render target image, which is, which one is that? Just a second. I think it's this one. So here we're going to add a render target image script and point the player to it. A second. Map player on render target has not been set. So that is this one. And there it is, and now it's drawing the feet. And done is perfect. It does declare done when it's done. So I want to fire an event here. So we're going to make a public delegate void called Spline Walker event handler, which is just going to have a event args here. And then I'm going to do a public event called a Spline Walker event handler called Spline Walker event. And then we want to have a private bool here says has event fired. And I want to say if the event hasn't fired, then we're going to do a Spline Walker event dot invoke. And in the args, I don't think we can pass anything. Just like that. Now I'm going to add a public class here called, I'm just curious. I don't think I can do that. And so we want to have a Newman here called Spline Walker event type, and we can have one for start, and then we can have one for done. And we'll call this a Spline Walker event args. And now here we're going to say has event fired equals true. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I want to change this from update to be a public virtual void start movement. So we're going to add a private bool called isMoving. We're going to say if it is moving, then we're going to do all this. We're going to change this to just say is moving equals false. Down here we could say if it is moving again, because it could change in between there. Then we're going to change the position. We also want to have a virtual void called stop movement, which is a is moving equals false. So now over here, on map player, I want to say require component type of spline walker script. Then we'll add it here as a protected spline walker script. And we'll grab it in the awake. We're going to want to subscribe the event that I wrote. And we also want to have a override for my dispose, which always gets called, and do a spline walker script dot event minus equals to on spline walker event if my spline walker script does not equal to null. Okay. Now, in our case here, this is setting all pixels to clear. Do we want to have it fade to clear? That's a question. So on my spline walker script, we can expose the this. And so now if my spline walker script is moving, then we're going to do this. Here we're going to switch on the args. And that should be it. So up here, I'm going to do a debug.log for a done. Okay, now I need to call in my map player start I want to have a public virtual void start movement, and then you also want to have a virtual void called stop movement. And all this is going to do is the spline walker script dot start movement, and this is going to do the spline walker script dot stop movement. And now we need to make a new type called a map game manager. And so if I go down and look at my base game managers, we just want base manager, which has your prefabs and an audio manager. Yep. So we can just make this a base manager of type map game manager. And on here I want to have a public map player script called map player script. And then we're going to have a protected virtual void start where I'm going to do a map player dot start movement. Okay. When I look at the map player now, I need to make another script in here called a map script. Which is a base mono behavior. And on this one, I want to put the render target camera, the render target image, the map player on the render target, the material prefab, so we're going to move the start method over here to the map script. So you're setting the texture here. So you want to say that this is a start movement. And you want to pass in here a texture 2D called the render target texture. Let's leave that out for now for a second. We can move the material over here and colors over here. Also, you can move the reveal size square over here. So down here, I can expose the spline walker script. We'll make it even easier and just say is moving. And this one's going to need to have now the map player script. You're creating the new material here when you create your new texture, which comes from the render target image material main texture. Like that. Okay. So I want to actually make this a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to be an abstract class. And I want to have a protected abstract void called set next state. And this is going to first call set next state. And I want this to spit out a texture 2D. Down here, I'm going to make a new one called map home script. which is going to inherit from a map script. I'm going to have an enum here for my state called map home state. And we're going to have a start. We're going to have a windmill. We're going to have a house. We're going to have a castle. We have a gate. And we have a lighthouse. Additionally, I want to have a struct called a, and I want this to be serializable. And I want this to be a map home state. And in this, we have a map home state type. And then we're going to have a Bezier spline for the spline. Hold on, I'm still thinking, just a second. Because we need it with a spline, we need it with a state. Because you're going to do a spline walker map player script so in here you want to have a public virtual void set spline, and if you look at your spline walker script, it's got a spline on it, a duration, sure. Okay. So you're going to set the spline down here to be a Bezier spline. This is going to actually be on your map home. We want to have this type here as a public class called base map state. which includes a spline, a float for the duration, and that's it. We want these to be abstract, and we want to have a generic of these. And we're going to have a number of these map states. So over here, this is now a class which inherits a base map state. And we just want to have the state. We also want to have a material for the foreground and a material for the background. So this is going to pass in a map home state. And now what I want to do is a selected state equals a map states dot first or default. And I want to get the one where the map home state is equal to map home state. And then I want to do a map player script dot set spline to be a selected state dot spline. We want to return my selected state dot get foreground dot get get texture called main text as a texture 2D. This is called render target image foreground. And then you want to have a image here for a render target image background. So now you're going to do a render target image background dot material. Is there like a set material? Equals your selected state dot background. When you set this spline, you also want to set the duration. That looks good. If I rebuild this, everything built, jump back in here, we're going to have to make some changes now. This needs to have a new type called map home script. It needs to have on it the player, which is here. I don't want Spline Walker to be available like this, but we'll leave it for now. Which is this one. My map player on the transform is this one. Now when I look at that, we can move him to be here. Where did my map player script go? And now this just goes in the protected virtual void update, like that. Like that. Okay. Like that. My render target camera is this one. My render target image foreground is this one. This one is my background. My material prefab. The material you're using is for generating the new one when you're starting your movement. So this is actually a... We don't need this. Instead, this set next state should be returning a type of T. Which should be a... this, and we're going to call this next state. Okay, and then here, our new material is going to be next state.foreground material. That should do it. So back in here, before we do that, looks like I have an additional set here that I don't need. Okay. Before I do anything here, let's make sure everything works. Foreground, background. We're starting at home. My map states will be 1. We want to say the spline is this. The duration will be 8. The foreground is this one. And the background is this one. And I'll run it. Now nothing's going to happen because I forgot to add in my empty game object here called Map Game Manager. And we need to have a prefab manager. And a map player for some reason. Instead of doing that, we're going to do a so you need to make a copy of this map script, and you want to call it map script generic. And then our map script, we're going to remove this. Like that. Over here we can scrap it. And then in the generic, we want this to be inheriting from map script. So a lot of this will be duplicate. Like that. This needs to be a base map state. And which means that this is now a number of map script called maps. And we're going to have a new enum here called map type. And we've got home, world, desert, and dark zone. Like that. And now what you're going to do is you're going to get your map. Where my map type is equal to a map type. And then you'll do a map.start. So in your map script, we want to have a public enum called a public map type called map type. And then you want to have down here your start movement. Okay, so our map here is we have something here called a map home. Which looks like this. We'll give this a run. So in my map game manager, let's ignore the base manager and just make it a singleton of type T. Which is of itself. Okay, so something didn't start. In your map game manager, it should invoke your map type. Oh, and you need to do a map player script.start movement. You also want to have a public virtual void stop movement here, which is just a map player script dot stop movement. And there it is. Done. Okay. Now we're going to set up our next type. Almost want to make these scriptable objects, but there's no reason. They really are just a map state. But you could lose this data, which is what we don't want. So it's almost better to put this in a scriptable object. So we'll do that in a few minutes. Let's figure out how we wanted to break up my prefabs here. We're going to say that this is a prefab. And I'm going to say that this one is a prefab. I'm going to say that this one is a prefab. And then map home will be one as well. We're going to call this map home map. So now when I look at the map home map, let's go ahead and add a second state. And this one's got this spline. We'll say it has a duration of 5 seconds. It's going to be going to the windmill. My foreground is a trail 1 and my background is trail 2. Like that. And we're going to apply all. We'll run this. And perfect. Now it's doing the second piece just right. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a new scriptable object in here. Call it a map. And I want to call this one that map type generic, right? Okay. And so now what I want to do is here we're going to call this a map state SO. And on this, we're going to give it a map type, I guess. Second. No, we don't need that. What we do need is this stuff. With no spline. And that's it. Okay, and so then over here, second. This is now going to be a type of mat state SO. Which is called a map state SO. And this is now going to be a map state SO. Actually, we're going to make a copy again. I'm going to call it a map state home SO. And I'm going to add in this map state home here. Which means that this is going to say current state. This is going to be a map state home SO. Like that. Like that. Now, where this gets complicated is right here, because you do want to have a new type here called a public class, just called a map state. And it's going to have a map state SO called a map state SO on it, and then a Bezier spline. And it's going to be a type of this like that. Like that. We need to even go one more back, because the next map state but you only want this to be on the generic. Which means I can just move this here. And then here. And then I can get rid of this map script generic. So I want to get the one where this x.mapState is a map state home SO and map state home SO of this equals the current state. I'd prefer to do this with generics. But I'm doing it this way because I would like just to be able to call not from the generic to start the action. Okay, so if I was to run this again, I need to add down here under maps a new map home, and we're going to create a new map state home. Let me go look over here at my map state. This is actually an abstract. And we're going to say that this is a map home state 0. And what did we say that this was over here? We were doing it for 8 seconds with a foreground of the initial, and the trail one is the background as a start. Doing another one here as a map home state 1. That's going to be trail to trail 2 as the windmill. We'll make this one 5 seconds. We'll make another one. Call it a map home state 2. This one will be 4 seconds. It goes from 2 and goes to 3, and it's house. Now we're at the castle. So we're going to make a new map home type called map home state 3. So we start at trail 3, we end at trail 4. You're at the castle. This is 4 seconds. Map home state 4. Which is going to start at 4 and end at 5. And that's at the gate. And the last one here is a map home state 5, and this is going to be ship. Which is this one. We have the same textures for each. On my asset database, come on. Come on. There it is. So in my asset database, I can drag these in. Now at the moment, you're bringing these over like this. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the splines are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll leave the 6th one off for now. And we will apply that. And when we run it, perfect. And if I was to change the state, current state, it's upset at me because on my map home here, I didn't set these right. They need to be start, windmill, house, castle, gate, lighthouse. So my duration of this one needs to be like 4. And we want to do lighthouse is your current state. So I think that's fine. You don't need that 5th state. Yeah, see, so the gate's working fine. So we can get rid of that last state here. And when we get to lighthouse, we need to add one more. So I'm going to open up this prefab. And I'm going to duplicate I'm going to make a new game object here called Spline Trail 6. We'll move it down here and then add in a Bezier spline. We'll just have it over there. And then down here. And then like that. And that'll be the ship movement. Now, we also want to, on our player, I want to have a public bool is showing sprite. And then I also want to have a public sprite renderer for my sprite renderer. So here, if is showing sprite and my game object is not active, then you want to do game object.set active to be true. And then you want to say, or it is not showing the sprite and my game object.active self, like that. And so now we can say, if my current state is equal to lighthouse, we need to enable the ship as a sprite and so this is going to be your player map player script dot is showing sprite equals true. So we're going to make a new state here. Which is going to be this one, and then this spline. We'll change it to the lighthouse, save everything. Look at my player object. We need to set the sprite renderer. And there it went. But it said so I mean, it's moving it, but it never enabled it. So it's not the game object here. It's the sprite renderer. Let's try it again. So now we saw the sprite move. We also saw an error. when it goes off the page, so if this is greater than 0 and this is less than my width, and this is greater than 0 and this is less than height, then you want to set it. There we go. So instead of doing it like this, I'm going to do a console, a debug.log. I want to do this and then this. And we want to do this one and then this one so I can see what's happening. So it started to break here. When it went negative. Which means if this is greater than 0 and this is greater than 0, Try it again. Okay. And this is less than the let's do a debug.log of this. Because I bet it's divided by 2 or something. So it's negative 1600. How do I get the length of that? And let's see what this is. It doesn't have that, so you have material.texture.bound size width. Yeah, that's it. It's 2048. Plus your reveal square size divided by 2. That's it. Now it should work. Perfect. Now, one thing I want to do is on my map home, I want to add in here a sprite renderer for my ship. And what I want to do is I want to say my ship.transform.setParent to be my map player script.transform. And in this one, we're going to change the ship we want to do this with a transform. Like that. When it did that, it didn't change the size. Because the order is wrong. And this one we want to say ship.local position equals vector 2.0. Now, on my map, I want to do a protected map type. I want to say public virtual void update. We're going to say if my map type does not equal to my map type, then I want to do my start movement. Now, we don't want to do it here. I want to do Well, I want to get the current state. So we want to have a protected map state for my state current. So we'll just do a cheat for now. I'm going to say if temp, then we want to do a start movement. And then we want to say temp equals false. Okay, just for temporary. So now back in the game. Let's start at the gate. And temp is on your map. So here. Well, that didn't work. When I look back here, interesting. It's just saying done. What is happening here? So if I go back in here and I set my current state to the start, it's perfect. Didn't quite finish it, but it's just about. Now we go to the next one. Windmill. You want to set your progress equal to 0 here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that one doesn't follow right. That's all that is. That spline does not follow the trail. And then 6. And you want to say here that if it's else, I want to say ship.set parent to be the foreground. You could just do that, right? I moved the ship, but I didn't want it to. So here we're going to have one more on this called public transform called ship parent. Okay, so now when I look at this and I change this to be the lighthouse and I click go, really moved my ship far away. Let me try that again, but I'm going to test something. So where you're setting the parent, if next state is map state home SO, then we want to break or just return. Because what I think it's doing is it's setting the parent before the position. Because it changes the position here. See, but you haven't changed this yet. If I was to run this again, I change this state here to be the lighthouse and I fire it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the local position here to be vector 2.0. And then when I do my start, I want to get my final state equals map states.first or default, which is equal to the that one. So I want to get the lighthouse here. And then I want to do my ship.transform, ship.position is equal to my final state dot spline dot get control point of the first one. If I look at my spline, my first point is down here at 13 minus 15. But your control point is that. So you could do a get point at 0. And then you could do this position as a new vector 2 of my init position.x and init position.y. Try it again. Okay, we're going to jump down here to this one. There it is. Now, what I wanted to do before I forget is over here on the render target, I want to change my foreground to be this one. And now when I look at my spline, we need to get this more accurate. So the reason I'm going on the outside of this is because it's going to read the points off of that corner, I believe. Now when we try it again, and we set this thing to be on the castle, it's getting closer, but still no cigar. If I look at the render target, try that again. It doesn't seem to erase right, but just this one. So if I was to change this spline a little bit, same issue. It's not even close. Why is it only this one? I had to take a break. A little odd. It's like it's never erasing that foreground image. Just for testing, if I was to change this to be 250, Yeah, if I just make it larger, then it totally works. So what if I change that to be 120 and then I move this spline up way higher, like that? Almost. It never erased. It's going off that one. So if I was to move this line up, see if that one works at all. And if not, I'm going to take a break and we'll come back to this. I think it's because it's because of the logic that I put in here. It's because of that. See, that's exactly what it is. So if I was to comment these two out, yeah, see, now it works perfect. So what if you multiplied that by your render target image foreground dot local dot transform dot local scale dot x? Not quite. So what if I did this whole thing times my render target image foreground dot transform dot local scale dot x? Same issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut both of those out like this. Leave that. And what I want to do is I want to add a new variable here. Like that. And we want to add in here a new one of these called is erasing. Like that. And then this, we want to do a get with a private set. This one, when we start the movement, in this next state, we want to say public bool is erasing. And then cool, and now that's part of the map state, so it's all automated from there. So when I run this now, each one of these states should say is erasing, and I can say yes to all of them except for that last one. And change the state here. And then we can go to the lighthouse, and there goes the ship. Perfect. Okay, 2 cosmetic changes we want to make quickly. The first is that the first one is that you don't need ship parent on here, and you don't need temp. Next thing was the reveal square size. We only wanted it to be 100 and 100. Give it a second to load the asset database. Okay. Over here in Illustrator, we change these just a little bit. So I'm going to bring this back over here. We'll do this very fast. So I want to get rid of the background, the paper, the border, the compass, the objects. We just want to have paths. We're going to export this as this one here. Sorry, so it's file, export as, and we want artboard 3. Something doesn't seem right here. Because this is artboard 29. And we'll call it that. And we want that to be on white. It's 1. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4. Come on. And then export 1. Okay. So back over here. If I open these up, it's 72 by 3200, and then I change the canvas to be 2400. That one doesn't look right. This is the last one. There we go. Now we can re-enable everything. Jump over here. This is the first one. Change the size to be 72 by 3200. Change the height to be 2400. Save it. That's 1. This is 2. Change the size to 72, 3200. Change the pixels to be 2400. Save it. Next one, change the height to be 72, 3200. Change this to be 2400. This one, $72, 3200, 2400. We only have one more. Is this one? 72, 3200. Change this to be 2400. Now we make a new folder. I copy these in here. This is called Trail 1, Trail 2, Trail 3, Trail 4, Trail 5. And then down here, under my resources, all we're going to do is overwrite them. And that's done. Okay. So I no longer have it in there so that it'll start, but we know it will. We can see that the paths look better. Still have our done, which is fine. The next thing I'd want to do is we're going to create a new scriptable object called a map SO. And this is just going to be really straightforward for now. It's a base scriptable object GUID. All it's going to have on it is a map type called map type, and then a number of these map state SOs called map states. And then down here, we're going to make a new map. And this is just going to be called map home, which is going to have these states attached to it. And we're going to store that on the database. So that's about it for our home map. We need to rinse and repeat this for the what's it called? We need to rinse and repeat this for the world map, for the desert maps, and for the there. Sorry, I had a weird issue. Just resolved it. And we need to do that on the on each one of the different maps, and we only have 4 of them, so we're 1/4 of the way through, but we have all of the logic set up for how we're going to do it. Additionally, we need to create these maps and map states on the server side, and then feed this data from there. So we still got a little bit of work. When we come back, we're going to do more what we've been working on. So if you have any questions, make sure you have them in the chat. We also go to Discord, discord.pixellorestudios.com. I put these videos up at youtube.pixellorestudios.com, and I'll see you guys in just 20 minutes. Thanks so much.